Yeah.
My favorite.
It's Judd's Hockey Show.
Fiala, Johansson scores! Kaprizov around, Prugi scores! Cross Tarasenko, glove saved by Talbot. Center to Perron, and what a save by Talbot. And Minnesota, on a night they get only 11 shots on goal, they make it 11 in a row here in St. Paul. Cam Talbot with a 37-save shutout.
Welcome into Judd's Hockey Show. Zulgad and Declan Goff, as always, in the Wild, now on a 3-game winning streak, rebounding nicely after being swept by the Avs last weekend in Colorado and being outscored 11-1. Dex, they come back and beat the Woeful Ducks in back-to-back games. And then at a game that we both attended on Thursday night, they beat the Blues 2-0. And as you heard LaPanta mention there, 11 shots on goal for the winning team in that game. And thanks to Cam Talbot in goal, who was fantastic. He made 37 saves. So the shots were 37-11, and the Wild won. They have now won 11 consecutive at home. They are 2 points out of first place, and there is a tie, actually, in the West Division for first place after the Avalanche destroyed, and this is how good they are, the Golden Knights last night. So I believe they're both at 45 points, and the Wild is at 43 points, and certainly in a prime playoff position. I want to start with what we saw last night and the difference. If you're looking for the significant difference to me from the Wild of like the last 2 or 3 years and this team, this is it, okay? Because last night to me is a microcosm of the explanation. It's twofold. One is it's amazing what star players, which the Wild did not have, I want to be very clear previously, it's amazing what star players do because Kaprizov and Fiala were, well, in Fiala's case, outstanding all game long. In Kaprizov's case, he scored another off-the-charts goal. And the other thing, and this is something that you prepared us for during the course of last season, the debacle, and then coming into this season as well, the other thing is goaltending. Mm-hmm. And Cam Talbot last night, third consecutive start, but Kaapo Kähkönen deserves credit too. The Wild is now getting really solid, non-flashy, but really good goaltending, and the fluky goals and the bad goals of yesteryear are gone. And so this is how you can afford to be outshot by a pretty good hockey team in St. Louis by 26 and still win if you have the formula. I'm not saying it's going to work on a nightly basis, but last night is a game that the 2019-20 Wild lose 9 out of 10 times.
Yep.
You could feel the difference. Superstars and goaltending.
Those are the two things that can get you by in the NHL. And the Wild for years have prided themselves on their depth. Hey, look, we got 4 lines they can roll. Are they all? Is one of them a stellar superstar line? No, but we have 4 lines that can compete with any other team's 4 lines in terms of depth. And now the Wild are yes, they still have decent depth, but this is where superstars and goaltending in this sport can carry you, absolutely carry you. Cam Talbot, against getting a start on back-to-back starts, and we thought, oh, okay, that's kind of weird. You don't really even see that in any team. Most teams never put their goalie on back-to-back traditional starts like that. Well, he was damn good, and also he's been really good on home ice too, so I could see some of the logic there from Dino wanting to go with Cam Talbot. But Fiala and Kaprizov literally carried you to relevance in that game. And you saw Fiala again playing angry. I said to you at the beginning of the game, I said, what the hell are they doing? Like, him and Johansson again, what's the plan here? You're again burying your next biggest superstar. This isn't going to work. Well, Fiala said, screw it. I'll take things over. Fiala basically said, I'm going to pull a Kirill Kaprizov. I'll be the center. I'll be the playmaker. He was dropping passes. He was creating situations. There was even a couple times where I would wish Kevin Fiala would have been more aggressive and would have taken a shot instead of going for a drop pass. That being said, he was drawing attention and he was creating opportunities for his teammates. And Fiala and Kaprizov, this is where, again, the Batman and Robin situation. Both of these guys, Fiala's right up there with Granlund and other guys in terms of pure skills. He's not a game-changing player, but he's certainly a nice piece to have on any team. Kirill Kaprizov is your game-changing player, and you saw that when he scored his highlight reel goal again last night, which was just phenomenal. I mean, it knocks you off your feet watching him play in person. And this is what it does. If you have superstars and even above average, not Vasilevsky, but even just above average goaltending, you can go far in this sport. And that's why the Wild are basically 12, 15 games or so over 500.
And Fiala last night, I think, played his most complete game of the season. It was, so Wednesday against the Ducks, he came back and played a pretty good game, pretty solid game. Last night, I thought, was as complete as he can possibly play. And the amazing stat is 0 shots on goal. He did not have a shot on goal. And the Johansson first goal of the game that he set up was a pass where there is no question that Binnington expected Fiala to shoot and came over to Kevin's side and was taking away that shot. And Fiala had the presence of mind and the skill to make a great pass, and Johansson would have had to work hard to miss that net. But I really thought that Kevin played great, and this is what you want from him. This is who he can be. This is who he can be. And I'm not in the camp that questions his year, because I think he's had a nice year. I think he works really hard. The fact that he doesn't have more guys that can make plays alongside him and a center, and we've talked about this before, definitely hurts him. But the game that he played last night, and I'm with you, I'd like to see a shot or two for sure. But that is, when he applies himself, that is who he can be. Yeah, let's talk about the Kaprizov goal, though, because the Kaprizov goal, to me, was absolutely incredible. It starts in the neutral zone, okay? And by the way, so the Blues actually, I think they were going for a change. And when they dumped the puck in, instead of getting it to the corner in the Wild zone, they basically dumped it to the sideboards, which right away was a mistake, especially when a guy as skilled and fast as Kaprizov is on the ice.
Certainly.
Kaprizov gets the pass in neutral, and the play starts there. And if you go back and watch this play, watch how, and he's going against a guy by the name of defenseman on the Blues of Torrey Krug, who signed a multi-year millions of dollar contract with the Blues to leave Boston. Torrey Krug is a top defenseman.
Yeah, very good player.
Like, this guy is a legit defenseman.
Absolutely.
Watch how Kaprizov, without any effort that you can see, starts to set him up by using his edges and by changing the positioning of Krug himself, which confuses Binnington. But don't watch the puck. Watch Kaprizov's skates, because he changes the angle continually, and that's why Binnington lost the post there, and it's just that small area. But Binnington lost the post because Kaprizov did such a great job of working Krug and then taking a shot where I think Binnington was convinced, and most guys would, that Kaprizov was going to duck behind the net and come out.
Yeah.
It is, that goal is beautiful, but if you watch the entirety of that goal, and the amount of work Kaprizov does to set up that goal and that shot, I mean, we are talking about an off-the-charts, absolutely. And I wonder if in Kirill's mind, he thought to himself, all right, Tarasenko's good. Fellow Russian, very skilled. Now, I think Tarasenko takes long chunks of games off, but when he wants to be good, he can be great.
Yep, I agree with you on that.
I wonder if he said to himself, okay, I'll show Tarasenko. Because everything about that goal, it's incredible. The more you go back and watch that goal, the more impressive that goal becomes by Kaprizov.
Absolutely. And we're starting to get some fans in there. They're allowing 300 in, and I believe, here in a week or two, they're finally going to have about 3,000 come in, and you start to hear the fans a little bit more, even those 300 fans, and that's why it's so much fun to watch. And anyone that's going to be able to go to the XL Injury Center and see him in person, I'm telling you, it's so worth it. But his skill and watching him, and it's going to be a broken record. We'll be saying this maybe for the next 7-8 years, and I'm curious to see what that contract, we can get into that here in a little bit too, because his agent has been talking with Bill Guerin. When you watch him, you just know he's special, and it proves the point that this team has lacked that player for its entire franchise. I mean, Gabby was great. I loved Marian Gaborik, man. Marian Gaborik, I keep in mind, I was 4 months old when the North Stars left. I have no memory of the North Stars. My dad loved the North Stars, so when hockey came, I was about 7, 8 years old at that point in 2000. And naturally, I gravitated towards Gaborik and the Wes Walses of the world. And Gabby was fun to watch, don't get me wrong, but he was hurt. And he reminds me more of, he's a more talented player than Fiala, but their ceilings are similar. Like Gaborik, yes, a step ahead of Fiala in terms of his career ceiling. If Kevin Fiala becomes Marian Gaborik, I mean, that's terrific. But both of those players are more good to complementary pieces than they are game-changing pieces on a franchise. And watching Kirill Kaprizov do what he did to Jordan Binnington, who, by the way, is a mess. And I don't know, and I know why you tried to sign him, but man, awkward time to sign a contract with how poorly Binnington has played. And hey, St. Louis got their cup 2 years ago, and I'm sure most St. Louis fans will still say, hey, it's worth it to sign him because it was worth that Stanley Cup run. But you took advantage of it. And it was kind of eerily similar of the Blues, Jake Allen series from 2 or 3 years ago, where the Blues outpossessed and outchanced the Wild all game long, but the Wild were opportunistic. They score on 11 shots. And when you have someone like Kirill Kaprizov creating those opportunities, and Kevin Fiala also literally lifting the team up. That's why the banner says it right there. Kaprizov and Fiala carrying the team. I told you that at the beginning of the season. I said, if this team's going to go anywhere, those two are literally going to be dragging them into relevancy. Now, I did not envision the goaltending being this good. I knew it'd be better. Did not envision it being this damn good through the first 30 games of the season. But those two are going to be dragging them. And now you're starting to see national commentators and people talking about, man, I mean, we thought the Minnesota Wild would probably sneak into that 4th spot, but we certainly didn't think they'd be 3rd in the West and flirting with maybe even winning the division. So that's what those two players can do for you. It changes your dynamic. It changes the national perception. It's been phenomenal to see.
It has, and I believe Kaprizov had gone, so in the past 6 games going into last night's game, I believe he had, I've got it right here, he had no goals, 3 assists, a -3, so 3 points in 6 games. And yet the Wild, during that time, they got blown out by Colorado in the 2 games, but they beat the Coyotes at home twice, and then sandwiched around that, beat the Ducks twice, and the Blues. And here's where I will give credit, and here is another reason in that span of games how different this team is. And by the way, I think the old school Wild on this last 3-game homestand probably win 1, maybe 2. They do not win all 3. They don't win last night for sure. And I could easily have seen them blowing one of those 2 games to the Ducks because they did not play that well in those 2 games. And the Ducks are terrible. And I was a little bit surprised because the Wild was coming back off those terrible 2 games at Colorado. I thought that they would smoke the Ducks at least once. They did not. Now, that being said, they did last night complete a span of 10 games in 18 days. They have the next 3 days off before they start a 4-game road trip. They're going to play in San Jose, I believe, on Monday night. So they're off Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I don't think they're going to return to practice. I think they're going to practice at the X on Sunday before they leave to play the Sharks. All of that being said, I get the whole tired thing, but you know what? Every team in the league has this. Like nobody has an easy schedule. The Wild's not being screwed here. So they look tired, they were tired, but they still won games. And that's where I want to go to another way that this team is different, and this goes back to the 2 Ducks games, Dax. You know, one of their key lines in those 2 games, without a question, was the 4th line. And in fact, the 4th line in the first game against the Ducks started every period, and we talked about this on the previous podcast, but that was Bonino, Bukestad, and Sturm. And Sturm, who I really like, and jumped in and fought a guy on the Ducks last night who threw a questionable shot along the boards on Bukestad. Bukestad as a 4th line wing, I really like. When Nick Bukestad applies himself, like he has to work, he can be an effective player. I'm not saying he's a star because he's not.
Yeah.
But when he has it in his mind, I'm a 4th line player, I need to prove something, and he brings an effort to it, he's good. Bonino consistently does. He's not a great player, but he consistently competes. And Sturm cares a lot. And Sturm has speed. And Sturm clearly knows that he's just starting in this league and he can prove himself. That 4th line, Dex, think about the difference in, for instance, that line and what that line meant in the 2 Ducks games compared to the 4th lines that have been trotted out by this team in the last 2 or 3 years. Mm-hmm. Like just the difference in the competitive level, the difference in attitude. In fact, Bonino got a penalty, but I'm going to give you a play at the end of the 2nd Ducks game, which was the Wednesday afternoon game, that I absolutely loved. Bonino goes in for a face-off. Was there 2-point-something seconds left or 3 left in the game? And the Wild's up by a goal. And he doesn't win the face-off. He falls on the puck. And guys are jabbing at it, and they're poking him, and he gets a delay of game. But you know what? They don't put time back on the clock for that. So now there's like 1 second left. Mm-hmm. The point being is this team for a long time did not have guys who would resort to basically whatever they had to try and do something productive. Nick Bonino did. And it got him a penalty, but guess what? It also ran probably a second and a half, 2 seconds off that clock. And I know it's a small thing, and I know some people might say it's a BS move. I don't care at this point. What I care about is that fourth line came and they played hard and they played well, but they also played like a group that completely knew its role. And when you get to the playoffs, that's incredibly important. I don't want fourth line guys. I don't want Nick Bukestad trying to get up to the second line and he's going to show you. I want these guys working as hard as they possibly can and working their asses off to be as productive as they can as fourth liners, because that's where success can lie potentially. And I just go back to how many Wild teams had fourth line guys who were too good for the fourth line. They didn't think they belonged there. This group doesn't care. This group knows where it belongs, knows what its role is, and plays that role. And I give them a lot of credit because those Ducks games were ugly. They weren't particularly fun to watch. And the old school Wild, I think they lose at least one of those games. They didn't here. I don't care how they won. They got 4 points in the 2 games.
I think when you're going to the point of guys knowing their role, because look, Bukestad opening night was the team's quote-unquote number 1 center. I mean, he was the top-line center to start the year. And I've criticized him. You know, you bring him back for the right price, sure, I'm interested, but I think you could do better than Nick Bukestad. But to your point, when he applies himself, he can be a very complimentary and good player. I really like Nico Sturm. I think Sturm, and he's found a nice role on the fourth line, and odds are that's probably where he will have an NHL career on. I think he's got some skills that I would like to see him even playing above in a fourth line minutes and above a penalty kill and a traditional fourth line role. I think he's got honestly some skill.
You might be right.
But when you have guys like Bonino and Bukestad, and you just say, hey, yes, there was a time period, especially with Bukestad more than Bonino. Bukestad that you were a 25 goal scorer in Florida when you came out in the league. You were a prolific college hockey player. You were Minnesota Mr. Hockey, 10 years ago. But Nick, you're probably not that player anymore. And I think Nick honestly knows that too. That doesn't mean that Nick can't be an NHL player. It just means that Nick Bukestad is not a first line or top 6 dude anymore. And that's okay, by the way. It's okay to point out the fact that, hey man, if you want to make it and have a long lasting career, if you want to play in the NHL for a long time, this is where you're gonna be slotted in. And this has happened before. I mean, especially with guys in college hockey, this usually happens all the time in college hockey. Prolific guys who are really top-line players, they come in the NHL and it just doesn't translate. It's a completely different game. We're watching the college hockey tournament right now as we're recording. The college hockey game is so different than the NHL game, and you'll find guys like Nick Bukestad who will carve out a fourth line. Nick Dowd at St. Cloud State. Obviously, I'm biased. I saw him play for the Huskies. He's a phenomenal fourth line guy for a really good Washington Capitals team. Why? Because he knows his role, and he's going to have a nice career for a long time. So if you can define those roles, and it makes things easier in the playoffs, because like you said, those fourth lines, they might only play 9 to 10 minutes in an NHL playoff game, but those are pivotal minutes. Those are pivotal minutes not for what they do on the ice, but to give the top players some rest. That's an important role.
Hell yeah.
Phil Mackey and another hockey guys who mock hockey might say like, oh, what does it really mean? No. That is an integral part of the hockey.
And they can provide a spark.
Yes.
Like in the first Ducks game, that fourth line, the Wild was dead. Like both of those games, and I know they're tired, and I know it's the Ducks, and they just got blown out by a combined 11-1 against the Avs. I understand all that. But that Wild team looked lethargic and dead. And in the first Ducks game, guess what? That fourth line brought energy. Dean started them for every period because of that. But I mean, that's the type of thing that I'm with you. Plays an instrumental role in that game not going sideways, and now it's a 3-2 weird loss, right?
Right.
That's exactly it. And I think the one thing, and since we're not allowed access to the locker room, we don't know for sure. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I think the one thing too, which probably helps a guy like Bukestad, who I've always questioned because he. With the Gophers, he was a potential star. But I always sort of questioned effort at times. Like, it seemed like there was more talent there than effort, and he could have dominated consistently, and he would turn it on and off. But right now, my guess is in that room, if you're Nick Bukestad and you're at a pretty important crossroads of your career, and Dex, you look around, and there's Bonino. same type of thing, right? Fourth line guy, not that talented, but he works his ass off. He can win faceoffs, and he takes the fourth line role. It's like, yeah, I'll take that role, and I will do whatever I have to keep that role. Ian Cole, right? Third line defensive pairing guy, a veteran. He's won 2 cups. Bonino, same thing, same Penguins teams. And, you know, Cole is not a star, but he's a stabilizing influence on that entire team. And he plays a really important role. And the entire coaching staff loves these guys, I'm sure. If you're Bukestad, don't you look at that and say, hold on a second here. To your point, Tex, I can carve my career out here. Like if I do this, if I care, if I don't say, man, I sure wish I was still with Kaprizov, but you know what? I'm with Sturm, Bonino, and I'm playing an important role. But I love the fact, and how many times on previous Wild teams could we say this, that in a game against a bad team, when your team is lethargic and absolutely dead, the fourth line's like, hell yeah, let's go.
Absolutely.
Like that is, I can't tell you how important it is, the conversation about what you're saying when we're talking about mentality here. Like this is not about all talent. It's not. Pro sports is tough. I mean, they just played 10 games in 18 days, and I have no sympathy for them because everyone's doing it.
Correct.
But we're talking about the difference in the mentality here. And yes, the superstars are incredibly important, and they've got to, and that's awesome. And goaltending, like you said last year, you know, Dubnyk and Stalock worked to give up weird goals. I was watching last night's game, and I realized I'm scarred now. Because I was literally like, well, when's the weird goal?
Yeah.
In fact, Talbot,
he allowed one.
In the second game against the Ducks, allowed one, and I tweeted, there's the Dubnyk goal. Right. You know, the weird goal, centering pass goes off the goaltender and in. So I'm so scarred, I have come to expect it. And when he makes 37 bleeping saves and gets a shutout, I'm like, whoa, what was that? But that's sort of what you should expect. That's why this franchise and that's why this team is so different. It's things on and off the ice.
Absolutely.
End of rant.
Or
positive.
Bravo.
Positive rant.
Bravo rant. And look,
positive rant.
You know, I think Nick Bonino, in terms of knowing your role, you know, Nick Bonino has been there and done that a little bit. He's also 32 years old. Nick Bukestad's only like 27. I mean, he's still a younger guy. We talked about like a few weeks ago all these UFAs they brought in, and I'll add Ian Cole to that mix too, who was acquired very early in the season. You know, which guys would you want to keep around? And you know, I think Bill Guerin would like to keep around Nick Bonino probably the most. I know Elliot Friedman of 31 Thoughts and of TSN or Sportsnet, I should say. He said, I wouldn't be surprised if they can make the money work. They would actually extend Ian Cole.
I like that.
And for the right price, I'm all in there.
I love him.
Don't overpay for him necessarily, but if you can lock him up for 3 years at like $2 million per or something, like if especially if Ian Cole knows like, hey, look, if you want to go test the market and get more on a 1-year deal, you know, by all means, go ahead and do it. But if you're happy here and you like with the way things are trending, and I love the way he is very candid with his comments about the team and after games, particularly after losses.
So valuable.
I'm in on that. Someone like Nick Bukestad, you know, who's 28, he'll be 29 in July. You know, I think maybe if you start understanding, and especially that's where the Nick Bonino influence also continues to pay dividends. Look, Bonino on the ice, yeah, very much a replacement level player. He is. He's a penalty killer. He's a face-off specialist. Those guys you can find. But what he brings to the room, what he brings to the chemistry, that's why Bill Guerin brought him in here, because he has this itch to him, and he has this culture that knew that had to be changed. And that's what Guerin said this summer. The culture had to be changed. And I saw tweets yesterday. You know, Nino Niederreiter, another brilliant game in Carolina. I think he's up to like 14 goals this year. Dude's a stud. Nino Niederreiter is a very good player. And guess what? The Wild are still just fine without him. Carolina's great with him.
They're better off as a team without him.
They are. They are.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
He fits in Carolina, which is awesome.
He's a better player than Victor Rask. No one is arguing that. But the Wild are just fine without Nino Niederreiter and vice versa. Nino Niederreiter is just fine without the Wild as well.
So those two Penguins Cup teams, to what you were saying before, those two Penguins Cup teams that Bill Guerin was an executive on had Ian Cole and Nick Bonino on them. And they know what all three of them know, and this is what I kept saying, all three of them know what it takes to win a cup. And it takes a lot. And it's intangibles, and yes, Malkin and Crosby help. I get that. Good goaltending helps a lot. I get that. But you can't have the pieces in place to win that cup until you've got the pieces in place in the room to start with. Case in point so far, Edmonton. If this was just pure talent,
Right.
if this was just a talent game,
They win every year.
I give you Draisaitl. I give you McDavid. They've got deficiencies, but my God, they've got two of the superstars of superstars, and superstars are important, as we said at the outset. But this starts as it's like making a cake, and it's a mix of things. And the Wild was basically missing all of the mixes previously. I also want to give a shout out to Cam Talbot on this notion too. Asked last night after the game if he had expected Kaapo Kähkönen to start that game because Talbot Kaapo started the last Avs game and got blown out. But in fairness to Kaapo, Cam had started the game before that and got blown out.
Yeah.
And then Cam came back home and started the first Ducks game. He then started the second Ducks game. And so I think we all thought before the third day break that must mean that Kaapo, who's played very well for the most part, was going to start the third game, and he did not. Talbot did. And to his credit, and I don't know Cam at all, and again, it makes it more difficult to assess people because we aren't around them and it's all Zoom. But to his credit, Cam Talbot asked flat out, did you expect Kaapo to start? He said, yes, I did. He said it seemed like a good time to start him. Mm-hmm. I was surprised. And I didn't get any hidden agenda behind that comment, Declan. I didn't get any, I was going to start, but I'll say this. Seemed like a straight shooter. It's a small thing again, but I love it.
Yeah, and you know who doesn't say that? Dubnyk.
Oh, that's what I was trying to say.
That's your point.
Yeah.
And I'll insinuate it. I'll just throw it out there. Dubnyk doesn't say that.
Yeah, you're right.
He might say, well, I understand the decision why they would go L instead of me, but when your number's called, you got, it would be all that spiel.
Yep.
No, I think Cam Talbot absolutely gets it. And this is, we've been flip-flopping. Who's 1A, who's 1B? 3 weeks ago, actually a month ago, I said it was Talbot. 2 weeks later, I said it was Kähkönen. And now it's probably back to Talbot as 1A and 1B. It's interesting to see who they want to go with. And right now, you're comfortable with either of those guys. Talbot being a lefty goalie, Kaapo Kähkönen being a young guy who's been playing very, very well as a rookie. I think you can't really go wrong with either player. And you'll most likely play a hot hand in the playoff series. Whoever loses a game, I bet Dino will go with the other guy. I wouldn't be surprised unless, it was a weird circumstance. There's trust in goal with both goaltenders. It's very similar to when the Fernandez and Rolison years where you felt comfortable with either of them in net. You really did. So that it's important because you needed to also rotate these guys in. That's another big thing. Neither of these two are getting burnt out because basically both of them are playing almost at an even rate.
Yes.
Which is very key too in this crazy run of a lot of games in a short amount of time. So this is good. This is a good thing for the Wild. Their goaltending is figured out.
So playoff series right now, Talbot would start game one, right? Now?
I think so,
And I think it's just going to switch.
Yep.
But that's fine. But I loved, to your point, I loved the fact that Talbot didn't go Dubnyk. And the most important thing is, as well as I do, that Dubnyk, if he didn't play, would have gone to Boods or Josi or whomever and been like, hey, what's going on? I'm the top goaltender here. I don't think Talbot pulls that stuff. And that's incredibly important in the room. But, besides a few rough games for the entire team, I just love the fact that a guy like Talbot is not flashy. He made a save on Tarasenko last night that was right below us. So it was in the second period when it's the long shift change. It was right below us, and Tarasenko came out from the circle and geared a shot towards Talbot's glove side.
Yeah, I remember this play.
And he made a really simple save.
Yeah, both you and I.
No rebound, nice glove save.
Yeah, both you and I saw it.
Yeah. But you know what it was? It was an unbelievable save. It was a great save. Because, that's a Tarasenko shot. That's a Kaprizov shot. That's not I just don't know what I'm doing. He geared that shot right there. It was from an unusual or at least a semi-difficult angle. And Talbot made that save. And there was no histrionics behind it. There was no big scramble. There was no, oh man, he got beat. It was a save, a whistle, face-off, done. That's what you want.
Right. And to our point earlier in the podcast, when Tarasenko's engaged, he's damn good. He's been in the league now 5-6 years. We know who he is, but there are times, and unfortunately, there's this perception, and it comes with Russian players that this happens with them, that they get disengaged, that they don't play hard all the time.
Yeah.
I have yet to see that from Kirill, which is great.
I agree. I'm with you so far.
Kirill is also the kind of player, and this is what, and Fiala was like this a lot last year too. He's so talented. He's going to make an offensive zone turnover that might frustrate a traditional hockey. He's like, dang it, Kirill, what are you doing? Yeah, you probably should have got it deep.
Away at times, yeah.
But he's going to make a dumb player that'll cause an interception and cause an odd man rush the other way.
Yep.
But you take those lumps knowing that how damn good of a player he truly is. When someone else of his nature is trying, when Victor Rask makes that turnover, it's like, God bless it, Victor. Just throw the puck deep. You're not going to outwork him. Your skating is as good as me and Judd's, and we haven't been on skates in years. So that's where Kirill, that's okay. I'm glad he doesn't get disengaged. I'm glad he is that talented. I'm curious what that next contract looks like. Because I think I don't think you do the 2-year bridge. I don't think you do a short term.
Let's talk about that next show, because I feel like that deserves a long segment. And yeah, it scares. As a Minnesota sports follower, it scares you. But I'm with you. And the reality is it will largely define Bill Guerin's entire tenure here, fair or not. Last thing for this episode. Did you ever think that we would have a conversation that could go like this? Marcus Foligno and Zach Parise, one's hurt, and then Parise is on the COVID protocol list, are both out. Did you ever think that we would have a conversation about, I clearly think it's not even close, the Wild misses Foligno, and I don't think that they really miss Zach much. The Zach stands can say that they do, but I think there's no question that Foligno's size, and it's not skills probably going too far, but he does have some skills and can certainly score some goals. I feel like that is an element that when he's not playing, you definitely can see it missing. Zach still works hard, but I don't know that I can tell you in these past 2 games he's missed that I think he makes a difference.
He doesn't, man.
I don't mean to be mean here, but I just don't see it.
What's so curious is Lou Lamoriello was on the record, and look, Lou is weird with trades, man, and leaking them and reporting them.
Well, he doesn't leak them.
Right.
He gets mad when they're leaked.
But I believe was it LeBron? It was someone very plugged in at The Athletic, said that he's looking to add, and he has $7 million in cap space.
The Anders Lee contract is off the cap for now because he's done for the season. Yep. I think he tore an ACL, and so he's been put on LTIR. So his cap space is now available to the Islanders, who are going to make a move for sure.
Yeah.
My only question is, do they really look at Zach as being the answer to their problems? Because what they really need is some goal scoring help.
For sure. I'm curious where that goes, because it almost happened last year. Zach makes 7.5, so it's a little bit still underneath.
But you
make that happen. If it's $500K, that's pennies on the dollar. You figure out a way to make that happen. But I'm curious. I'm really curious because, yes, to answer your point, I just don't think the Wild need him.
I don't think they need him. I don't know that they can dump him, but I just don't think. I watch the Foligno-less games, and I see it. Mm-hmm. I can see it. He provides a hell of a spark. I watch him without Zach, and Zach still works hard, so I'm not saying that he's loafing out there because he's not. And I just don't see the ingredient missing. But yeah, I don't know that. So your Isles are really good.
Yeah.
And Lee's absence is a big deal.
Yes, it is. That's a big loss.
And they really need a top 6 guy to replace him. And a year ago, I think we could have forced the conversation that Zach might be that guy still. Lou's not a dumb dude. He's going to watch Zach, and I don't know that you see it. And I know that there's a case to be made that Zach Parise, as he's currently playing, could play on a lot of second lines in this league. I just don't see him being on the second line of a really good team.
Right. And the last year did make sense. It totally made sense. He was still playing very well. They didn't have any core injuries, I believe, to my knowledge, around when that trade almost happened 13 months ago. Yeah, I mean, it's still a little far-fetched. They could do better, basically. They could do better than trying to acquire Zach Parise and making that long-term contract work. But yeah, I'm curious where it goes because I just don't think they need him. I really don't, man.
Kirill Kaprizov's contract, we are going to get to that next episode because it's going to take some time. I think that there are a lot of people who are going to be in very short order in this town, and they should be, given our past history, nervous about what the young superstar is going to do. But for now, Judd's Hockey Show, we're done.
Pass, shoot, score.